President Trump's trade truce with China is being met with divided opinions. American farmers are breathing a sigh of relief, but China hawks in Washington are sounding the alarm. Our chief North Asia correspondent, Steve Engle, is following all this. Give us an idea of the reaction, because we do have Steve Bannon saying it's just a surrender by Washington.
Yeah, and he's not in the administration. What's happening in the administration is kind of funny. Well, not funny. It's divided, as you say.
Peculiar.
It's Washington, D.C. Of course, there's going to be divided opinions, OK? It's either hope or it's despair. It's either true concessions or it's a total capitulation. We don't know, really.
Victory or defeat?
Victory or defeat, right. Let's turn it to Rishaad, though. He has a third-party perspective. He's the senior trade economist at Cornell University. He's saying this is little more, the truce, that is, that Mnuchin announced, is little more than a brief de-escalation of tensions, because he says the fundamental differences remain unresolved. Still, the spin doctors are out, of course, those in the White House and those in Congress. You have Larry Kudlow, of course, in the White House, economic advisors saying they're seeing signs that China will be opening up its financial services sector more as momentum builds, as well as what Mnuchin has said. Momentum is building between China and the United States in resolving their trade differences. Chuck Grassley, the Republican senator from Iowa, a key agricultural state, he hailed it. A little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel on the trade fight, as, of course, Donald Trump saying we're going to sell more agricultural products, as many agricultural products as we can grow. We're going to sell to China. That's debatable as well. But even within the Republican Party, you have dissent. Marco Rubio, who's very, very critical of ZTE and other Chinese companies, he says China is winning the negotiations. Keep in mind, he was a Republican presidential candidate. The Democrat Ron Wyden, he's saying China, or the United States, or the White House, is getting rolled on trade with China. And then there was those Steve Bannon comments.
But tell me about those. What was he basically saying? Is he one of the harshest critics? Is he essentially saying that Stephen Mnuchin has given away the hard-fought wins that Donald Trump had attained? Even
though Donald Trump kicked Steve Bannon out of the White House, Steve Bannon is still very supportive of his former boss, Donald Trump. He's saying Donald Trump had made some very hard-fought wins with China, but now Steve Mnuchin is basically giving it away. What's happening in the White House is you have a divide between the hardliners, the hawks on China, and those who are more pro-trade, like Mnuchin's Wilbur Ross and Larry Kudlow. On the other side, you have Peter Navarro and Robert Lighthizer, more of the hawks. Steve Bannon would probably be in that camp, more of the hawks. This is what Steve Bannon had to say. He's basically saying the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin misses the central point on the economic competition between China and the United States. Trump changed the dynamic with China, but in one weekend, Mnuchin has given it away. He goes on to say that Mnuchin has completely misread the geopolitical, military, and historical precedents that President Trump has done and finally put China on its back heels.
Yep, pretty scathing. But, you know, if this is, in fact, a truce on trade, even a temporary one, how does it ultimately play into the leadership summit, the Trump-Kim summit in Singapore, and how North Korea is handled?
Yeah, well, this is an important strategic reason for this truce, because, again, Donald Trump needs China and cooperation from Xi Jinping. It's no secret that Xi Jinping has met with Kim Jong-un now twice in the last month and a half or so, and is obviously counseling Kim Jong-un on how to deal with the United States. There's a lot at stake here for Trump, of course, to have China on its side with midterms coming up. Donald Trump wants to see this Kim summit as a victory, also China trade tensions as a victory. If he loses both of them, it could be negative going into the midterms. But China, too, has a lot at stake. They reportedly called for these talks between China and the United States to avoid, of course, confrontation and war and a regime change. But also China doesn't want North Korea drawn closer to South Korea and the United States. So a lot is at stake. So trade is definitely tied to this Kim-Trump summit.